My husband, whose attitude often veered into misogyny, constantly belittled me as a stay-at-home wife. Every time I attempted to assert myself, he would threaten me with divorce. "Challenge me, and we'll get a divorce," he'd warn. Then, one day, I uncovered a secret of his. From that moment on, my respect for him vanished, and I knew it was time for a change. I was done being the submissive wife he could scorn. Armed with the divorce papers he prepared, I set my plan into motion. My name is Megan. After losing my father in high school, it was just my mother and me. Thanks to the inheritance he left, I was able to attend an IT vocational school and find a place in the workforce. I was finally starting to give back to my mother. But just as I was finding my footing, she passed away from a sudden heart attack. Feeling completely alone, my savior appeared, my current husband, Scott. After I started at my new job, Scott took it upon himself to mentor me, guiding me through the complexities of the corporate world. He was a pillar of support when my mother passed away, showing genuine concern for my well-being and encouraging me to lean on him more. From that point on, I relied on Scott not just for career advice but for personal support as well. Scott was a constant presence in my life, always leading and reassuring. "Megan, you really can't imagine life without me, can you?" he would often tease. When we began dating officially, he proposed with a promise. "From now on, I'll protect you for the rest of our lives. Let's get married." Following Scott's suggestion, I left my job after our marriage to become a full-time housewife. My new role was to create a comforting home so Scott could focus on his work without distractions. However, living up to Scott's high expectations proved challenging, and I struggled to meet his standards and manage the household chores. "Hey Megan, what did you do all day?" my husband would ask, his tone often tinged with frustration. "I cleaned the room, did the laundry, aired out the comforter, and went shopping for dinner. I also spent time making beef stew." "How is it?" I asked softly. "It's fine, but did you really clean properly?" "Why do you ask?" "There's dust on this shelf." "Oh, I must have missed that. I'll make sure to pay closer attention next time." "If you're home all day, you should make sure the housework is done right." I'm sorry." Scott continued to impose a superior-inferior dynamic in our marriage, just as he did at work. One day, he commented, "What's with this meat and potato stew? Is it not to your liking?" I asked, concerned. "Why is there pork in it? It's supposed to be beef." "In my family, we always use pork for this dish." "That's probably because your family couldn't afford beef," he said dismissively. "Are you implying that my salary isn't sufficient?" "That's not what I meant at all," I replied, trying to explain. Scott would harshly reprimand me whenever things didn't go his way, frequently belittling me for being the child of a single-parent family and lacking common sense. He began spending his weekends away from home. One day, I asked, "Hey, Scott, where do you go every weekend?" His demeanor darkened. "Why do I need to explain my plans to you? It's not about reporting. I'd just like us to spend more time together on weekends. You have the whole week to relax at home while I'm at work. Let me enjoy my days off the way I choose. I'm not asking you to take me out. I just want us to have some quiet time together." "That's exactly what I can't stand," Scott muttered as he stormed off to the bedroom. "I married a woman with no special talents and let her be a housewife. All you need to do is stay quiet and handle the chores." The next day, he handed me a piece of paper. It was a divorce notice with his name already filled in. "What's this?" I asked, shocked and confused. "You don't even know what this is. I guess single mothers don't teach their kids the basics," he replied dismissively. "Scott, are you saying you want a divorce?" "This is a warning," he said coldly. "It's because of that disrespectful comment you made yesterday. If you ever speak to me like that again, I'll divorce you immediately." "But why?" I asked, bewildered. When Scott made that comment, I was left speechless. With no family to turn to, I had nowhere else to go. Since then, I had no choice but to quietly watch him leave every weekend. One day, while cleaning the house as usual, I noticed his computer was still on. As I moved to turn it off, I glimpsed the screen and saw a hotel resort homepage. Could this be a couple's trip? I thought, a flicker of hope brightening my mood. Maybe, despite his harshness, Scott still cared about me. From that day on, I put extra effort into my housework, eagerly waiting for Scott to mention the trip. However, despite my anticipation, he never brought it up. Curiosity got the better of me, and I began checking the computer more frequently. The browsing history revealed that Scott was still searching for hotels. I started to wonder if he was actually planning the getaway for us. One day, while checking the computer again, I saw a reservation confirmation for a hotel on a booking site. The reservation was for the upcoming weekend. It seemed he had finally picked a hotel for us. Eagerly anticipating an invitation, I waited for Scott to mention the trip. By Friday, my patience wore thin, and I asked, "Scott, don't you have something to tell me?" He looked at me, a bit taken aback. "What are you talking about?" I hesitated to press him further about the trip. His mood soured, and he went to bed early. The next morning, I found him already dressed and ready. "Good morning, Scott. Why are you dressed up so early?" "Oh, it's nothing. I'll be leaving once I'm ready. I won't be home today," Scott said curtly before quickly preparing himself and heading out the door. What was going on? Had he changed the reservation? I checked the booking details and saw that the name in the companion section was no longer mine but another woman's. Companion, Lily, 25 years old. In that moment, everything became clear. Scott wasn't planning a trip for us. He was planning the getaway with a young woman named Lily. All my feelings of love, gratitude, and respect for Scott dissolved instantly. Acting swiftly, I decided to verify his affair. I went to the hotel where Scott had made the reservation. When I arrived, I saw him and Lily cheerfully entering the hotel. I made sure to take photos as evidence, firmly imprinting the scene in my mind. When I returned home, I thoroughly examined our computer. After some searching, I found text messages between Scott and Lily, along with photos of them together. Now I had the evidence to confront him. I decided to wait until he came back from his trip. Until then, I spent the day wandering aimlessly and later enjoyed the solitude of my empty house. Scott's usual scolding for my laziness seemed like a distant memory. The following day, I skipped housework, ordered takeout, and spent the day however I pleased. On Sunday night, Scott finally came home. "Welcome back. You're late, aren't you?" I greeted him from the sofa. His eyes widened at the sight of me lounging there. "What's going on?" he asked, bewildered. "What do you mean, what's going on? Why are you surprised to see me still on the sofa?" When I didn't greet him at the door, Scott's anger flared. His eyes fell on the delivery bag on the table, and his frustration grew. "Hey, what's this? Living it up while I'm away?" he demanded. I sighed and replied, "And where were you staying this weekend, Scott? Were you having a good time? If you knew, you wouldn't be acting like this. Sounds like you want to see it again," Scott said, rummaging through a drawer. "Wait, it's not here." His anger erupted. "Where did you hide the divorce papers?" "They're gone." "What?" I asked, confused. Scott's frustration nearly boiled over at my response, but then he let out a sarcastic laugh. "So, that's it," he sneered. "You threw away the divorce papers because you don't actually want to divorce me, thinking I wouldn't leave you. You're truly clueless. It's a shame your mother didn't raise you better." "I don't understand what you're talking about," I said, bewildered. "So you're playing dumb now, huh? Fine, I can get more divorce papers from City Hall anytime. I'll just go get some right now." "I didn't say I threw them away," I replied. "Then where are they?" "They're not here because I've already submitted them," I said calmly. "What? Didn't you hear me? I signed those divorce papers and submitted them to City Hall yesterday." "Wait, you submitted the divorce papers? Do you even know what that means?" Scott asked, bewildered. "Of course I do," I replied. "Submitting the divorce papers means the divorce is finalized." "Are you saying you didn't know that, Scott?" Scott's face turned beet red at my mockery. "Don't mess with me. You lived comfortably on my salary." "Comfortable?" I shot back. "Where's the comfort in a marriage with someone who constantly belittles and ridicules me and never shows any appreciation for all the housework I do?" "Belittle you?" "Absolutely. As a housewife, you're clearly beneath me, the breadwinner. If you're going to act like this, I'm done. Go be on your own and see how foolish you've been. Get out right now." Scott erupted in anger, kicking me out and shouting. Anticipating this, I had already packed my bags. It was the right call. I grabbed my suitcase and left the house with a sense of pride. On impulse, I rented a weekly apartment and spent the night there. The next morning, I noticed an overwhelming number of missed calls from Scott. Just then, he called again. "Oh, what's up?" I answered. "Don't what's up me. Where are you?" "It's none of your business. We're not married anymore. Stop fooling around. The divorce papers you submitted are invalid." "But you signed them yourself," I pointed out. "I wasn't serious. You probably acted out of confusion too, didn't you?" After a night's rest, you should be more clear-headed. If you apologize, I'll forgive you. Just come back. I don't think I have anything to apologize for. How dare you test me, your husband? I supported you all this time. If I leave you, you'll be alone again. Is that what you want? I realized something. It's better to be alone than to be with someone who doesn't care about me. I could sense Scott's fury seething on the other end of the phone. Scott's voice thundered through the phone. What? I've made compromises. Fine. I don't care about you anymore. You'll regret this. I'm pretty sure you'll be the one to regret it. You can't do anything. You're just a loser. With that, Scott slammed the phone down in a fit of rage. I used to be terrified of his outbursts, but now I felt a deep sense of contentment. He didn't reach out for several days. Then, a week later, I received a call from him on my cell phone. Megan, what is this bill? After confirming Scott's affair, I had asked my lawyer to file for damages. It seems he had finally received the bill. Oh, did it arrive? The details are all clearly listed on it, I replied. Why should I pay damages? You're the one who walked out. I even offered to work things out, but you stubbornly refused to come back, Scott argued. Actually, you're misunderstanding. The damages are for your affair, I clarified. My affair? With whom and when? Scott demanded. With Lily, 25 years old. You've been seeing her for a year, I said calmly. How do you know? You left plenty of evidence on your computer. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Did you really believe I was that naive? Scott seemed to doubt my claims. Angrily, he retorted, Evidence? You're lying. There was nothing like that on the computer. Yes, that's right. I knew you weren't stupid enough to leave texts and photos with your mistress on your computer. You can't fool me, I said confidently. Why don't you see for yourself whether I'm bluffing or not? I challenged. I sent Scott the evidence of his affair. His voice immediately turned frantic upon seeing it. How did you get this? I thought I deleted everything. It's true that all the data had been deleted from the computer, but Scott overlooked the fact that I had a certification in IT from vocational school. After some effort, I managed to restore the deleted files and save them. Realizing he couldn't escape the truth, Scott's attitude shifted abruptly. Look, Megan, you don't really want to do this, do you? Yes, I had an affair with her, but it was just a fling. You're the one I truly love. You can't live without me, can you? Scott pleaded. I realized then that this was just his manipulation. Being with you only eroded my self-confidence. Instead of feeling protected, you were destroying my self-esteem. You're just playing the victim, Scott snapped. Without my salary, you wouldn't be able to survive. Sure, you get some harsh words now and then, but that's reality. I can't bear the thought of you, who betrayed me, enjoying yourself while I suffer. I'm holding you accountable for what you've done. That's what the damages are for. Scott finally recognized my resolve and reverted to his usual verbal abuse. Fine, I'll pay. I didn't realize you were such a spiteful person. I felt sorry for you being alone, so I got involved with you, but it was a huge mistake, Scott said, his voice dripping with disdain. Same to you, I retorted. You picked me because you thought you could control me. I should have seen that from the start. You're probably with your mistress, Lily, because she's young and obedient. Pay the damages and go be with her. You'll soon realize that you're destined for a lonely life. Despite his bravado, Scott transferred the agreed-upon amount of compensation to me as required by my lawyer. A few days later, he contacted me again. Megan, could you return some of the money to me? What? I exclaimed, unable to keep my voice down. I've never heard of returning a compensation fee. Besides, after paying the damages and dividing our property, you should still have plenty of savings left, right? Well, that's the problem. My savings are running low. I swallowed my pride to ask you for help, Scott admitted. It turned out that Scott, having invited Lily to live with him, had given her his credit card for emergencies. However, she had started spending recklessly, depleting nearly all his savings. Desperate, he was now turning to me for assistance. Frustrated, I responded, I may have been foolish not to see through you before marrying, but you're just as naive for not noticing your mistress's spending habits until it was too late. I realize now that you're the only one for me, Megan. You must feel lonely being single too, right? Seriously, will you ever grow up? Do you think I'll be single forever? I asked, exasperated. Don't tell me you've found someone else, Scott said, his voice tinged with concern. No, I haven't. And please stop comparing yourself to others. I replied. Well then, what is it? You don't have family anymore, right? He pressed. With the money my parents left me, I started a new business. I'm surrounded by great colleagues, and I barely have time to feel lonely, I said confidently. You with no special skills starting a business. Scott scoffed. Are you still insisting on that? Can't you just admit that your negative attitude affects everyone around you? I countered. Me ruining? Scott's voice trailed off, incredulous. You belittle others until they lose their confidence and spoil your mistress until she gets out of hand. Unless you change your selfish ways, neither you nor anyone around you will ever find happiness, I told Scott firmly, rejecting him once and for all. After that, he never reached out again. It seems he realized that he could no longer look down on me now that I was successfully running my own business. Rumor has it that Lily dumped Scott immediately after draining all his savings. With his tendency to either belittle or indulge others without forming genuine connections, Scott will likely struggle to find a lasting partner. If anyone is destined for a lonely life, it's Scott, not me. With that in mind, I dedicated myself to my work once more.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.